The planet Velos, known for its swirling crimson skies and rugged terrain, had become the epicenter of a fierce battle between the United Terran Alliance and the Greltar Empire. Captain Nathan Cross, commanding officer of the UTA destroyer Resolute, had seen countless battles across the galaxy, but none had tested him like this. His orders were clear: disable the Greltar fleet, secure Velos, and return to base. But war, as always, was unpredictable. In the chaos of battle, the Resolute detected a distress signal from a small Greltar vessel. It wasn't uncommon for ships to fall behind in the heat of war, but this signal was different. It was a royal code, the kind reserved only for the highest members of the Greltar aristocracy. "Captain, it's a life pod," Lieutenant Sarah Ward said, her fingers dancing over the console. "The ID matches the royal house of the Greltar Empire." Nathan leaned forward in his command chair, staring at the holo display. A royal ship? In the middle of a war zone? "Looks like the life pod's been damaged. They won't survive long," Ward replied, glancing at him, waiting for his decision. Protocol dictated that they treat the Greltar as enemy combatants. The logical course would be to ignore the distress call, finish the battle, and report the coordinates of the wreckage later. But something tugged at Nathan. An instinct, a gut feeling that this moment was bigger than just following orders. "Prepare a rescue shuttle," Nathan ordered, his voice calm but resolute. The bridge crew exchanged glances, surprised by the command, but none questioned him. Nathan's reputation as a tactician was unshakable, and they trusted his judgment, even in moments like these. Minutes later, Nathan and a small rescue team descended through the Velos atmosphere in a shuttle, dodging debris and wreckage from the ongoing battle above. The landscape below was a twisted wreck of craters and smoke, the remnants of a war that had dragged on for years. But in the midst of the destruction, a small, shimmering life pod lay wedged between two jagged rocks. Nathan disembarked first, weapon drawn, scanning the area for signs of Greltar soldiers. The Greltar were formidable fighters, tall, muscular beings with dark, iridescent skin and sharp, calculating minds. But today, there were no enemies, only silence. Inside the pod, he found her, Princess Alara, the heir to the Greltar throne. Her once regal armor was scorched and torn, her face bruised, but her eyes still burned with the intensity of a leader. She looked up at Nathan, her expression a mix of pain and defiance. Why are you here?" she rasped, her voice weak but defiant. Nathan lowered his weapon. "I'm here to save you." Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't argue. She was too weak to fight back, and time was running out. Gently, Nathan helped her out of the damaged pod, and together, they made their way back to the shuttle. As they lifted off the surface of Velos, the war still raged in the distance, but something had changed. Nathan had spared the life of the future ruler of the Greltar Empire, a decision that would send ripples across the galaxy. Weeks passed since Nathan's return to UTA territory with Princess Alara, the atmosphere heavy with speculation. Though the war had continued, his daring rescue of the Greltar heir had become the talk of both human and Greltar spheres. Many had questioned his decision, yet others hailed it as an unexpected gesture of mercy in the midst of conflict. One morning, a high-priority message arrived at UTA Command. It was an invitation from Greltar Prime, requesting Captain Nathan Cross to attend an audience with the royal family. The request was not just political, it was personal. Alara herself had made the request, and while the tensions between the two factions remained high, the potential for diplomacy lingered on the edge of everyone's thoughts. Nathan accepted, and within days he found himself on board a diplomatic cruiser, heading deep into Greltar space. The closer they got to Greltar Prime, the more Nathan felt the weight of his decision. He had expected gratitude, maybe a political gesture, but the royal invitation had caught him off guard. What exactly did Princess Alara intend? Greltar Prime was unlike any world Nathan had ever seen. Towering spires of crystal rose into the air, gleaming under the planet's multiple suns. The skies were filled with exotic ships, and the ground beneath his feet vibrated with the pulse of advanced technology and ancient traditions. As Nathan stepped off the shuttle, a royal escort greeted him, leading him through the grand corridors of the palace. The throne room was magnificent, with ceilings that seemed to touch the stars and walls lined with shimmering mosaics of Greltar history. Seated at the throne, Alara's father, Emperor Korath, looked every bit the ruler of a powerful empire. Next to him, Princess Alara stood with the same fierce presence she had displayed on Velos, though now fully healed and dressed in resplendent royal garments. As Nathan approached, the murmurs from the assembled Greltar nobles grew louder. Humans were rarely seen on Greltar Prime, and to have one stand before the royal family was an event worthy of attention. Captain Nathan Cross, Emperor Korath began, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, "You saved the life of my daughter. For that, you have earned a place of honor in our empire." Nathan bowed slightly, still unsure of where this was going. "It was the right thing to do, Your Majesty. I wasn't seeking a reward." Alara stepped forward, her gaze locked on Nathan. "And yet, you did something no one expected. You showed mercy when others would have shown cruelty. You changed the course of our conflict with one choice." Nathan nodded, meeting her gaze. "I believe there's more to this war than just killing. If we're ever going to have peace, someone has to take the first step." The Emperor gave a small nod of approval, but it was Alara who spoke next, her voice clear and commanding. "Your actions were not without consequence, Captain. In sparing my life, you have saved more than just a princess. You have saved the future of our empire." And then, to Nathan's utter shock, she continued, her words slicing through the tension in the room. "In gratitude for your mercy, and in recognition of the bond you have forged with our people, I offer you the hands of my nieces in marriage." The room erupted into murmurs, the nobles exchanging incredulous looks. Nathan's mind raced, struggling to comprehend the enormity of what she had just said. 7 princesses, her nieces, offered to him in marriage as a symbol of the Greltar's commitment to peace and the gratitude they felt. The galaxy, already teetering on the brink of war, would be thrown into chaos at the very thought. Nathan had never been one to shrink from unexpected challenges, but nothing had prepared him for the diplomatic storm he was walking into. The declaration made by Princess Alara, offering her 7 nieces in marriage to a human soldier, had sent shockwaves not only through the Greltar Empire but across the galaxy. News had spread like wildfire, and what was initially seen as a simple act of mercy on a battlefield had transformed into a monumental political gesture. Now, standing in the vast courtyard of the Greltar Royal Palace, Nathan tried to steady his thoughts. The grandeur of Greltar Prime was overwhelming. The palace itself was a marvel, a structure built from gleaming crystal-like materials that shimmered under the twin suns. The air hummed with a low energy, as if the very planet was alive and breathing, its pulse in tune with the regal structures surrounding him. He had been summoned not just as a guest, but as a future member of the royal family. It was an intimidating prospect, made all the more surreal by the fact that he still didn't fully understand the customs of the Greltar or the implications of this marriage proposal. He had saved Princess Alara's life, yes, but he hadn't expected this. The moment he stepped out of the shuttle, a royal attendant guided him through the palace gates. As he walked, he noticed the many eyes on him, nobles, courtiers, and soldiers alike, all watching the human soldier with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Word of the marriage offer had spread through every corner of the empire, and the Greltar nobility, steeped in their traditions, struggled to reconcile their feelings about this foreigner who had entered their midst. Inside the palace, the air was cooler, the light filtering through the crystalline walls casting rainbows on the marble floors. It felt like a world removed from the battlefield where he had made his fateful decision. His thoughts were interrupted as the doors to the main hall opened, and he was led into the royal audience chamber. There, standing at the far end of the hall, were the 7 nieces of Princess Alara. Each one of them unique, each carrying the regal bearing of Greltar royalty. Nathan's breath caught for a moment. This was his future, standing before him. These women, each a key to the fate of 2 civilizations. Princess Kyra, the eldest, was a figure of authority, her tall frame and sharp features accentuated by the intricate Greltar armor she wore. Her eyes were calculating, taking in Nathan with a warrior's appraisal. Her reputation preceded her. Kyra was a commander in the Greltar military, a woman of strength and strategy, known for her battlefield prowess. Next to her stood Princess Marin, quieter but no less striking. Marin was the scholar of the family, her robes adorned with symbols of ancient Greltar knowledge. Her eyes, though softer than her sister's, held an intensity that suggested a deep well of intellect. The younger nieces, each standing in formation behind their elder sisters, carried themselves with grace, though the mixture of emotions on their faces ranged from curiosity to uncertainty. They had grown up in the shadow of royal duty, but the idea of marrying a human had clearly unsettled them. Kyra was the first to speak. "Captain Nathan Cross," she said, her voice firm. "You've been given a rare honor. Not many from outside our empire have set foot in this palace, let alone been offered a place within our family." Nathan took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I didn't expect this outcome when I made my decision on Velos, but I understand the gravity of what's been offered." Princess Marin stepped forward, her voice softer but no less serious. "Our aunt speaks highly of you. She says you spared her life out of mercy. We Greltar value strength above all else, but mercy is a different kind of strength, one not often seen in times of war." Nathan nodded. "Mercy isn't a weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest choice you can make." The room was quiet for a moment, the tension thick. He could feel the weight of centuries of Greltar tradition bearing down on him. This was not just a marriage. It was a merging of worlds, and Nathan would have to navigate the complexities of both his own culture and theirs if he was to succeed. "You will be expected to learn our ways," Kyra said, her voice firm once again. "If this union is to succeed, you must understand the values of our people." Nathan met her gaze, determination shining in his eyes. "I'm willing to learn. I didn't come here for politics, but if this is the path I've been given, I'll do whatever it takes to make it work." Princess Kyra gave a small nod of approval, though her expression remained guarded. "We'll see if your actions speak as strongly as your words, Captain." The audience concluded, and Nathan was escorted to his quarters. He knew that the days ahead would be filled with challenges, both personal and political. But for now, the seeds of something new had been planted, and the galaxy was watching to see what would grow. The days that followed were a whirlwind of education, training, and social maneuvering. Nathan found himself immersed in the intricate world of Greltar customs and traditions, learning their ways of life in a crash course designed to prepare him for his unprecedented role within the royal family. His education began with Princess Kyra, who took it upon herself to teach him the nuances of Greltar combat and strategy. As the eldest and a decorated commander, she believed that if Nathan were to marry into their family, he needed to understand their military prowess. They spent hours in the training arenas, where Kyra introduced him to Greltar weaponry, sleek energy blades that hummed with power and required both finesse and strength to wield. "You fight well," Kyra said one afternoon after a particularly grueling sparring session, "but your style is direct. The Greltar way requires more than brute force. You must think like a strategist, anticipate your opponent's moves before they happen." Nathan wiped the sweat from his brow, nodding. "I've always been more of a charge into battle type, but I'll learn." Kyra gave a faint smile. "If you're going to be part of this family, you'll have to." While Kyra taught him the ways of war, Princess Marin took a different approach. She brought him to the palace's grand archives, a sprawling library filled with ancient texts, holographic tomes, and the accumulated knowledge of the Greltar Empire. Here, she introduced him to the cultural and philosophical aspects of their people, an education in Greltar history, diplomacy, and the importance of the royal family's role in maintaining balance within the empire. Marin's lessons were quieter, more contemplative than Kira's. She taught him about the Greltar's deep connection to their ancestral roots, their belief in the cyclical nature of power and leadership. "Leadership is not just about ruling," Marin explained one evening as they sat in a quiet corner of the archives. "It's about understanding the legacy you leave behind. Our people value tradition because it grounds us. If you're going to be part of our family, you'll need to respect that legacy." "I respect it," Nathan said, "but I want to understand it too." Marin smiled, her eyes lighting up. "That's a good start." Beyond the lessons with Kyra and Marin, Nathan spent time with the other nieces, each of whom contributed to his understanding of the Greltar in their own way. Princess Lena, the youngest, introduced him to the spiritual traditions of their people, taking him to the sacred temples where the Greltar connected with the ancient energies of their planet. Princess Varia, a diplomat, walked him through the delicate politics of the empire, preparing him for the inevitable scrutiny that would come with being married to royalty. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan began to see the Greltar not as an alien race, but as individuals with their own strengths, weaknesses, and complexities. The princesses, once strangers to him, were becoming his teachers, allies, and, though he couldn't yet admit it aloud, something more. But even as he grew closer to the royal family, tensions simmered beneath the surface. There were those within the empire who viewed Nathan's presence as a disruption, a foreign element that threatened the purity of their traditions. Whispers of discontent began to grow, and Nathan knew that not everyone was ready to accept the union that Princess Alara had proposed. The galaxy was still watching, and the weight of expectation bore down on him with every step he took. But for now, he focused on learning, on proving himself worthy of the extraordinary path that had been laid before him. The storm was coming, and Nathan Cross would have to be ready. Nathan had begun to find his place within the Greltar royal family, but not all welcomed him with open arms. The cultural lessons with Princess Kyra and the philosophical discussions with Princess Marin helped ease the tensions between him and his future wives, yet the larger political landscape remained turbulent. Whispers of discontent filled the corridors of the royal palace, and the murmurs were growing louder. The Greltar nobles were an ancient and proud people, fiercely protective of their traditions. The idea of a human, a member of a race they had long considered beneath them, marrying into the royal family and potentially influencing the throne was unthinkable to many. Among these dissenters, no voice was louder or more dangerous than that of Duke Saren, a powerful and influential noble who saw Nathan's presence as an existential threat to Greltar purity. Saren was a cunning strategist, having survived multiple political upheavals and wars within the Greltar Empire. He was not one to attack openly. Instead, he preferred to manipulate from the shadows, slowly pulling strings to undermine those who opposed him. To him, Nathan was a disruptor, a human who had no place among the Greltar elite. It was in the luxurious banquet halls of the palace where Nathan first encountered Saren face to face. The occasion was a formal dinner meant to celebrate the upcoming union, but beneath the surface, it was a political minefield. As Nathan sat with the royal family, he could feel the eyes of the assembled nobles upon him. There were curious glances, a few nods of approval, but many more gazes filled with disdain and suspicion. Duke Saren, dressed in deep purple robes that signified his high station, approached Nathan with a polite smile that did little to hide the malice behind it. His eyes, sharp and calculating, studied the human as if he were a puzzle to be solved. "Captain Cross," Saren said, his voice smooth as silk. "It's a rare thing for an outsider to be welcomed into our fold, rarer still for one to marry into the royal family. You must feel honored." Nathan, aware of the underlying tone, kept his expression neutral. "I do. It's not an opportunity I take lightly." Saren chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver through the air. "No, of course not. But I wonder if you understand the full weight of what's being asked of you. Our people are not like humans. We have lived by the same traditions for millennia, and those traditions have kept us strong. Your presence, while intriguing, may destabilize that strength." Nathan met Saren's gaze head-on. "I'm not here to disrupt anything. My goal is to learn your ways and to prove that I can be part of your people's future." Saren's smile widened, though it never reached his eyes. "Ah, but that's the issue, isn't it? The future. What you represent to the galaxy. Some see it as a promise of peace, but others see it as a threat." Nathan's grip on his glass tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "What do you see it as?" Saren leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I see it as inevitable that those who try to change the course of tradition will be crushed by it." Before Nathan could respond, Saren straightened, his mask of civility returning. "I look forward to seeing how things unfold," he said, giving a slight bow before moving away to mingle with the other guests. Nathan's mind raced as Saren's words lingered. The Duke was no idle threat. He was planting seeds of doubt, and Nathan could feel the growing tension within the court. It was clear now that Saren and those like him would do whatever it took to stop this union, even if it meant destabilizing the empire itself. After the banquet, Nathan found himself walking through the palace gardens with Princess Kyra and Marin. The night was quiet, but the weight of the conversation with Saren still pressed on his mind. "You've encountered Saren," Kyra said, not as a question but as a statement. Nathan nodded. He made his opposition clear, though in his own subtle way. Marin frowned. "Saren is dangerous. He has the support of several noble houses, and his influence runs deep. He won't attack openly, but he'll try to undermine you at every turn." "He's not just after me," Nathan said, stopping to face them. "He wants to stop the marriage because he thinks it will destroy the traditions of the Greltar." Kyra's expression hardened. "Our traditions are important, but so is our future. This union represents a chance to build something new, something stronger. Saren refuses to see that." Marin placed a hand on Nathan's arm. "We'll need to be cautious. Saren will make his move soon, and when he does, we need to be ready." Nathan nodded, the reality of the situation settling in. Saren wasn't just an obstacle. He was a threat to everything they were trying to build. And Nathan would need to be prepared to face whatever came next. As tensions within the Greltar court grew, the time came for Nathan to face a new challenge: the trials of integration, a sacred series of tests meant to prove his worthiness to marry into the royal family. These trials had been designed centuries ago to ensure that any outsider who sought to join the Greltar royalty was not only strong, but also wise, empathetic, and capable of understanding the true depth of Greltar values. The trials consisted of 3 distinct tests: one of physical prowess, one of intellect, and one of emotional strength. The trials were not merely ceremonial. They were watched closely by the entire court, and a failure in any of them would give those like Saren the ammunition they needed to oppose the marriage. The first trial, the test of strength, was held in the Grand Arena. Nathan would face a series of combat challenges designed to test not just his ability to fight, but also his ability to adapt to the Greltar way of battle. As he entered the arena, Kyra stood by his side, her presence a silent support. "You've trained well," she said, her voice low. "But remember, this is not about brute force. Think strategically. Use what I've taught you." Nathan nodded, his mind focused. The gates opened, and he stepped into the center of the arena, where he would face not only trained Greltar warriors but also holographic simulations of famous battles in Greltar history. The crowd watched in silence, their eyes fixed on the human soldier who sought to prove himself. The trial was grueling. Nathan was forced to adapt to new forms of combat, using unfamiliar weapons and tactics. But with each round, he grew more confident, his training with Kyra paying off. He moved with precision, his human instincts blending with the fluidity of Greltar combat. When the final opponent fell, the arena erupted in applause. He had passed the first test. The second trial, the test of intellect, took place in the royal archives. Here, Nathan was tasked with solving ancient Greltar puzzles, deciphering texts that contained the wisdom of their greatest philosophers and strategists. Marin was his guide, offering subtle hints as he worked his way through the labyrinth of knowledge. The puzzles tested not just his ability to think logically, but also his capacity to understand Greltar philosophy, how they balanced strength with compassion, power with responsibility. It was a challenge that required both intelligence and empathy, and though the pressure was immense, Nathan completed the test with Marin's quiet support. The final trial, the test of the heart, was the most personal. It required Nathan to confront the deepest aspects of himself, to show vulnerability and emotional resilience. In this trial, he was asked to recount moments of his life that had shaped him, to explain his motivations for marrying into the Greltar royal family, and to demonstrate his ability to form genuine bonds with the princesses. This trial took place in front of the royal family and the council, including those who opposed the union. Saren watched closely, waiting for any sign of weakness. But Nathan, speaking from the heart, explained his belief in the power of mercy, in the potential for unity between their worlds. He spoke of his growing respect and love for the Greltar princesses, of the lessons they had taught him, and of the future he hoped to help build with them. When the trial ended, the council deliberated, but it was clear that Nathan had proven himself, He had faced the trials and emerged victorious, not just by strength or intellect, but by the strength of his heart and his commitment to the Union. As Nathan stood before the court, the royal family by his side, he knew that the trials were only the beginning. There were still forces at play that sought to tear apart what they were building, but for now, they had won an important victory. The future of the Greltar Empire and Nathan's place in it was still unfolding, but together they would face whatever challenges came next. And the galaxy was watching. The success of Nathan in the trials of integration had silenced many of the doubters within the Greltar Empire, but it did not extinguish all the flames of discontent. Duke Saren and his loyal faction remained quiet, plotting in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. However, for now, Nathan's victory had won over the majority of the royal court, and the bond between him and the 7 princesses had begun to grow into something genuine. As days passed, the princesses, once reserved and cautious around Nathan, began to open up, allowing him to see the different facets of their personalities. They had once viewed him as an outsider, a foreigner forced upon them by political necessity. But now they were beginning to understand the depth of his character and the sincerity of his intentions. One evening, as the twin suns of Greltar Prime dipped below the horizon, Nathan found himself in the royal gardens with Princess Kira and Marin. The gardens were alive with bioluminescent plants that glowed softly in the darkening twilight, casting a serene light over their surroundings. It was one of the rare moments of peace amidst the chaos of royal duties and political intrigue. "You've surprised me, Nathan," Kira said, her tone no longer the stern, commanding voice of the warrior princess, but something softer, more personal. She stood beside him, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. "When you first arrived, I thought this was a foolish arrangement. I didn't think you'd last a week." Nathan smiled, glancing at her. "I didn't either, to be honest." Kira gave him a sidelong look, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "But you've proven me wrong. You've proven a lot of people wrong." Marin, who was seated on a stone bench nearby, added in her quiet, thoughtful way, "What you did in the trials, especially in the test of the heart, showed us something. You're not just here for duty or politics, you actually care about our people. That's something we didn't expect." Nathan sat down beside Marin, feeling the weight of the conversation. "I didn't know what to expect when I came here, but the more I've learned about your people, the more I've come to respect what you stand for. It's not just about surviving this political storm. It's about building something real." Marin smiled, her eyes softening. "Real. I like that." Kira remained standing, her arms crossed, but her expression had softened as well. "We've always been taught that strength is the most important thing, that our empire's survival depends on it. But maybe strength can come from different places, like trust and unity." Nathan looked between the two sisters, realizing how much they had changed since he first met them. What had begun as a forced arrangement now held the potential for something far deeper. The bond between them was not just one of necessity, but one forged through shared struggles and mutual respect. Over the next few days, the other princesses, each in their own way, also began to show Nathan the trust they were starting to place in him. Lena, the youngest, led Nathan on a tour of the spiritual temples she frequented, sharing with him the meditative practices that were so important to the Greltar. Varia, the diplomat, opened up about the intricacies of Greltar politics, teaching Nathan how to navigate the treacherous waters of the court. With each new bond, Nathan's connection to the royal family deepened. He had come to Greltar Prime as an outsider, but now he was beginning to feel like part of something greater. The 7 princesses who had once been distant and skeptical were now becoming his partners in a shared future. But even as these bonds grew stronger, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that Duke Saren was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for his moment. The day of the final ceremony to formalize Nathan's marriage to the 7 princesses approached. The event would be a grand spectacle, with dignitaries from across the galaxy attending to witness this unprecedented union. It was not just a marriage, it was a statement to the galaxy that the Greltar Empire and humanity could forge a new future together. But Nathan, Kira, and Marin knew that not everyone was ready to accept this future. Duke Saren's absence from the court had been noted, and the quiet whispers of his discontent had grown into something more ominous. Nathan, now attuned to the political undercurrents of Greltar society, had begun to suspect that Saren was planning something to disrupt the ceremony, and perhaps even the Empire itself. The night before the ceremony, Kyra and Marin met with Nathan in his quarters. The air was tense, and both princesses had the look of soldiers preparing for battle. "Saren's been too quiet," Kyra said, pacing the room, her warrior instincts on high alert. "I don't trust it. He's planning something." "I've heard rumors," Marin added, her voice low. "Some of the palace servants have mentioned seeing Saren's supporters meeting in secret. They're saying he's planning to disrupt the ceremony, to make a move that would destabilize the Empire." Nathan clenched his fists. "What kind of move?" Marin hesitated, her eyes filled with concern. "Assassination. Not just of you, but of the entire royal family." Kyra stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. If he succeeds, he could turn the nobles against the royal family, claim that the marriage was a mistake, and take power for himself. Nathan stood, the gravity of the situation settling over him. "We need to stop him." "We will," Kyra said, her voice steely with resolve. "But we need to be smart about it. We can't let Saren know we're onto him." As the three of them discussed their plan, Princess Lena appeared at the door, her face pale. "I've heard something," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Saren's forces are gathering in the lower levels of the palace. They're planning to strike during the ceremony tomorrow." Nathan's heart raced. "Then we have to move now." The group quickly devised a strategy. Kyra would lead a contingent of loyal soldiers to intercept Saren's forces before they could reach the main hall. Marin and Lena would stay close to the royal family during the ceremony, ensuring their safety while also discreetly keeping watch for any suspicious activity. Nathan, meanwhile, would position himself near the entrance to the palace, ready to confront Saren directly if it came to that. The next morning, as the ceremony began, the grand hall of the palace was filled with nobles, diplomats, and off-world dignitaries. The air was thick with anticipation, the tension palpable. Nathan stood at the front of the hall, his eyes scanning the crowd, looking for any sign of Saren or his supporters. The ceremony progressed as planned, with the royal family and the 7 princesses standing before the gathered assembly. Nathan's heart pounded as he watched, his mind racing with the knowledge of the impending threat. But as the vows were exchanged, there was still no sign of Saren. Then, just as the final part of the ceremony began, a commotion erupted at the far end of the hall. A group of armed men, dressed in the armor of Saren's private guard, stormed through the entrance, weapons drawn. The crowd gasped in horror, and chaos ensued as nobles scrambled to flee. Nathan's pulse quickened, but before he could move, Kyra and her soldiers appeared, intercepting the attackers with swift, deadly precision. The clash of blades and the hum of energy weapons filled the air as Kyra's forces engaged Saren's men, cutting off their advance. Saren himself appeared at the back of the group, his face twisted in fury as he realized his plan was unraveling. His eyes locked on Nathan, and with a roar of rage, he charged forward, his weapon raised. Nathan didn't hesitate. He moved to meet Saren head-on, their blades clashing in a flurry of strikes. Saren was a skilled fighter, but Nathan's training with Kyra had prepared him for this moment. He fought with precision and determination, refusing to let the Duke's treachery destroy everything they had worked for. With a final, decisive strike, Nathan disarmed Saren, sending his weapon clattering to the floor. The Duke staggered back, defeated, his plans in ruins. "It's over, Saren," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Saren glared at him, his eyes filled with hatred. "You've destroyed everything." "No," Nathan replied. "We've built something new, and you can't stop it." As Saren was taken away by the palace guards, the ceremony resumed, though the atmosphere was still charged with the intensity of the battle. The royal family, now safe, stood together as Nathan rejoined them at the front of the hall. The ceremony concluded with the vows binding Nathan to the 7 princesses, and as they stood together before the assembled dignitaries, the sense of unity and strength between them was palpable. They had faced treachery and danger, but they had emerged stronger than ever. The conspiracy had been revealed and thwarted, and with Saren's defeat, the path forward was clear. Nathan, Kyra, Marin, and the rest of the royal family now stood as a united front, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The galaxy had been watching, and they had proven that their bond was not just a political arrangement, but a genuine union of strength, trust, and love. The future of the Greltar Empire, and its new alliance with humanity, was now in their hands. The day after Duke Saren's failed coup, the royal palace buzzed with both relief and celebration. The final ceremony, which had been interrupted by Saren's attempt to seize power, was to be completed in full that evening. But the air carried more than the weight of political necessity. There was a new sense of solidarity, a genuine bond that had formed between Nathan, the princesses, and the royal family. Nathan stood in his quarters, staring out at the expanse of Greltar Prime. The twin suns were setting, casting the planet in hues of purple and gold. He had faced more than he had ever anticipated, trials of body, mind, and heart, and emerged on the other side stronger, but not unchanged. The Greltar Empire, once a distant and alien culture, now felt like a second home. The seven princesses, once strangers, had become something more than just political partners. They were now companions, equals, and in time, perhaps even more. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Kyra, her warrior's stance softened by the flowing ceremonial gown she wore, a rare sight for the usually battle-ready princess. "It's time," she said, her tone softer than usual. Nathan nodded, stepping away from the window. "How are things in the palace? Any word of Saren's loyalists?" "Most have either surrendered or gone into hiding," Kyra replied. "They know the tide has turned. Saren's defeat sent a strong message. The royal family won't be so easily undermined." Nathan met her gaze, feeling the weight of everything that had happened between them. She was still the fierce, uncompromising warrior, but now he saw the depth of her care for her people, and for him. "Thank you, Kyra," he said quietly, "for standing by me." She smirked, crossing her arms. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a galaxy to convince that this union isn't a mistake." Together, they walked through the palace's crystal-lit halls, where the final preparations for the ceremony were in motion. As they reached the grand chamber, Nathan saw the other 6 princesses waiting for him, each of them dressed in the finest regalia, their faces reflecting a mixture of pride and anticipation. Marin, with her calm, intellectual demeanor, smiled at him, while Lena, the youngest, gave him a shy wave. Even Varia, the most diplomatic and poised of the sisters, looked relieved to see him. The ceremony resumed in the grand hall, now packed with Greltar nobility and representatives from across the galaxy. News of Saren's failed plot had spread quickly, and while tensions still simmered among some of the nobles, there was an undeniable sense of closure. Nathan, alongside the 7 princesses, would cement a new chapter in Greltar history. The high priest of the Greltar faith stood before them, resuming the sacred rites. The ceremony was filled with ancient Greltar rituals, solemn vows spoken in their native tongue. Nathan, having learned enough of the language during his time on the planet, spoke the words with sincerity, binding himself not only to the 7 princesses, but to the Greltar people as a whole. As each of the princesses took her place beside him, Kyra, Marin, Lena, Varia, and the others, the sense of unity solidified. This was no longer just a political gesture, it was a genuine partnership, one built on mutual respect and trust. When the final vows were spoken, the high priest raised his arms. "This union is sealed, not only between worlds but between hearts. Let it be known across the galaxy that the Greltar and humanity stand united, not by force, but by choice." The hall erupted in applause, a sound that reverberated through the crystal walls and out into the starry night beyond. Nathan, standing with the 7 princesses at his side, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The struggle, the trials, the danger, it had all led to this moment. And now, they had succeeded. The weeks following the wedding ceremony were filled with diplomatic meetings, celebrations, and a sense of renewed purpose. Nathan and the 7 princesses were now the living embodiment of the alliance between the Greltar Empire and humanity, and their union was broadcasted across star systems as a symbol of hope for a more peaceful future. But while the galaxy marveled at the union, Nathan and the princesses knew their work was only just beginning. One of their first tasks as a united front was to embark on a series of diplomatic missions to cement the new alliance. Greltar nobles who had once opposed the marriage now found themselves having to work with Nathan and the princesses, many begrudgingly acknowledging his growing influence. Though there were still whispers of discontent, Saren's defeat had silenced most of the opposition. Their first diplomatic mission took them to a neutral planet on the outskirts of Greltar space, where they were set to meet with representatives from the United Terran Alliance, the governing body of humanity. It was the first time many of these human leaders would see Nathan not as a soldier, but as a representative of an alien empire. The reception was cautiously optimistic. Human delegates, who had once viewed the Greltar as enemies, were now forced to reckon with the reality of peace. Nathan, standing alongside the 7 princesses, was a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation instead of war. During the negotiations, Nathan found himself leaning on Varia's diplomatic expertise. She was a natural at navigating the complex web of interstellar politics, guiding him through discussions with a deft hand. The humans are skeptical, Varia noted quietly during a break in negotiations. They see you as one of them, but they're wary of how much influence the Greltar might have over you now. They have a right to be wary, Nathan replied, sipping from a glass of water. This is all new for them, just like it is for us, but if we show them that this alliance benefits everyone, they'll come around. Varia smiled, her respect for Nathan clear. I believe they will. As the diplomatic mission continued, Nathan also found himself growing closer to the princesses on a personal level. He had spent months learning about their culture, but now, as they worked together, he began to understand them as individuals. Kyra, ever the warrior, confided in him her concerns about the Greltar military's reluctance to fully embrace the alliance. There are still those who think strength comes from isolation, she admitted one evening. But I'm starting to see that maybe strength can come from unity, too. Marin, the scholar, showed Nathan the vast libraries of Greltar knowledge during their downtime, introducing him to ancient texts that chronicled the Empire's rise and fall over the millennia. If we can learn from our past, she told him, we can shape a better future. The youngest, Lena, often provided moments of levity, teasing Nathan about his human habits and gently guiding him through the subtleties of Greltar customs. You'll get the hang of it eventually, she joked, though there was warmth in her teasing. As their missions continued, the galaxy began to shift. Systems that had once been wary of Greltar expansion now saw the Empire as a potential ally. The tensions between humanity and the Greltar, once on the brink of all-out war, began to dissolve. And while there were still challenges ahead, factions that resisted change, tensions between old allies and new, there was also hope. Nathan, now fully immersed in his role as both a leader and a partner to the 7 princesses, realized that their bond had become more than a symbol. It was the foundation upon which a new future would be built. As they traveled back to Greltar Prime, Nathan stood on the observation deck of their ship, gazing out at the stars. Kira, Marin, and the other princesses joined him, standing by his side as they watched the vast expanse of the galaxy ahead. Together, they had faced opposition, danger, and uncertainty. Together, they had forged a new path, one that could reshape the future of both their peoples. And together, they would continue to lead, facing whatever challenges lay ahead, united, strong, and ready to chart the stars as one. The galaxy had been watching, and now, with the union sealed and the future unfolding before them, the galaxy was beginning to believe in the power of their unity. For Nathan Cross and the 7 princesses of the Greltar Empire, this was only the beginning.